record on this computer. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Miss Sarah, and this is a re-recording of our Skill Builders for Homeschoolers September meeting. We had a technical glitch where our recording did not save. So Lindsay Lewis here from Department of Education, the Delaware Department of Education, was kind enough to set a meeting up so we could re-record the information that she shared with us. So we are going to, I'm going to let Lindsay go into her presentation here shortly. Information below in the description will give her email to you if you have any additional questions, and the website as well for the Homeschool Connections and any other links for information that we will need, that she will share with us. So, Lindsay, welcome again.
Thank you. So good. We're going to do it twice.
Yes, exactly. Lots of good information. So why don't you go ahead and share your information, and then we do have a few of the questions from our original session that I can ask you afterwards. Okay?
Awesome. Yeah, perfect. So I'm just going to go through kind of a high level of what is required in Delaware for non-public schools. So there are very limited requirements to have a non-public school in Delaware. I'm going to go through just a couple of the types that we have. So we have homeschool, multifamily homeschool, and private schools in Delaware that we classify as non-public schools. Traditionally in this setting, we talk a lot about homeschools and multifamily homeschools. So the only requirement that Delaware has to be an active non-public school in Delaware is to submit annual attendance and enrollment information. Today is the deadline for our enrollment information for this school year. As long as you comply with that information, you are in good standing with the Department of Education each year, and you are considered a non-public school for Delaware. So one of the biggest things that we want to highlight right now, given our current situation, is just the process for applying for a new homeschool or a non-public school. We have, as Sarah mentioned, we have a website that we'll be sharing in the description. It has all of this information detailed out. But we have an online application that you can access via the Department of Education's website. It takes you through an easy step-by-step process in filling out your personal information, your students' information, and then any kind of grade information about your student, just so that we can keep that on file for each student in Delaware. It's a quick process. We did have quite a few applications at the beginning of the school year, but now throughout the school, it's a very quick turnaround time. So if you apply for a homeschool right about now, it takes about 1 to 2 days to be approved. So that's a different standing, or just an update on the standing right now for new homeschools in Delaware. There is one step that you have to complete with the Department of Education in setting up an Ed Access account before you can actually apply to a homeschool application. And again, that information is on the DOE website, so we'll just include that in the description. It's super easy. There's a couple of other things that I'd like to mention in walking through the non-public school process. While you complete your application, one of the things that you have to consider is your school name. In our previous discussion, I think we talked a little bit about school names and why it's important to pick certain names. These are your children's official records, so you want to make sure that if you are completing through high school and you're going to be supplying a diploma, that school name is going to be something that's communicated throughout your student's career. So you want to make sure you pick wisely. We do have a lot of schools. I think in our original conversation, we had a couple of people mention they use their street names. They use their last name. So there's lots of different different options that you have for naming your school. One of the other things that I mentioned is that we have very, very minimal requirements for Delaware. So we did have a lot of conversation about record keeping. We do promote very substantial record keeping for our personal sake. You want to make sure that you keep any of your curriculum, any of your grades, any information that has to do with your homeschool or your multifamily homeschool with your person. We do not require, as the Department of Education, to see or validate or verify any of that information, but it is very helpful for a parent if they are enrolling in secondary education or post-secondary education or returning back to a public school. So we always promote, make sure you keep a student file just like a public school would keep a student file. That way you have all of the information on hand. And then, as I mentioned before, we have lots of information on the non-public school website. We have gotten quite a slew of different questions that we've never experienced before in this new 2020 world. So we have a frequently asked questions document available there. Lots of great resources that you can check out if you have just general questions about homeschooling in Delaware.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So when we originally did this, one of the questions that we spent quite a bit of time on was registration and the timeline for those who are switching from public school or want to set this up in case public school is not working out for them this year. So can you talk a little bit about that with specific dates or time frames, and maybe like once they contact the school and contact the Department of Ed and set that up, how long that process takes to get them to the point where they can like physically take their student out and start homeschooling.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mentioned earlier that today is our deadline for enrollment. That does not mean that you cannot open a homeschool at any point in time during the year. So enrollment requirements right now that we're going through are for any school who has opened their school or had an open school within the past year. So if you are currently a parent of a student who is enrolled in a public school and you're working out through distance learning, you're trying it out, you want to see how this school year starts off for you, at any point in time during the school year, you can open a homeschool and you can withdraw your student. There are a couple of things that we like to mention about doing that process in the middle of the year. If your student is currently enrolled in a choice school or a program, a special program within a school like an immersion program or AP/IB classes, when you do remove your student from public school, you are forfeiting those options. So if you were to remove your student from public school and open a homeschool, you would no longer be able to re-enroll back in that choice school without going through a new application process. But the process for withdrawing your student from public school, you would follow the instructions on creating an Ed Access account. That takes about anywhere from 2 minutes to 48 hours. It's fairly quick to get your Ed Access account. It asks for your personal information just to set you up with one educational account. From there, you would request the non-public school application. It would come with your Ed Access account. And once you submit your non-public school application, that could take also anywhere from 2 minutes to 48 hours. During our peak season, I think we were at about 7 days, but we were approving hundreds and hundreds of new homeschools. Yes, this summer. So it was quite intense. But we have cleared that, so I don't think anybody this year is going to have to experience that again, including us, which I'm grateful for. But once you apply for your non-public school, When you receive the notification from the Department of Education that your student and your school has been approved, you'll get that information in an email, and it will walk you through step-by-step instructions on what you need to do next. One of the things that you need to do is take that letter that you received, or you can go back into the application. It walks you through that as well. And you need to take the acknowledgement letter to your public school to let them know that you're withdrawing and you've opened a homeschool. So that process is really important, that communication process between the parent and the current enrolled school. Because one of the things that we want to make sure in that communication is that a student just doesn't go missing, right? So they were in public school and all of a sudden Johnny's not coming back to school anymore and we have no idea where he went. So as a parent, we want to make sure that we're giving that information to our current school. And the school does reach out and ask us sometimes if we've seen or heard from students who may have been talking about homeschooling. So we just want to make sure we communicate that process. If you are currently homeschooling, so let's go the other way, and I open a homeschool, I really have high ambitions about how this is going to work out, and for whatever reason, it doesn't happen in this manner. And I want to return my student to public school now in the middle of the year. So in the middle of the year, you can enroll your student back into their resident feeder school. So wherever your district or your residence, where your student's address would send them to school. And you can go right into your building and re-enroll. When you do that, they are going to ask for a withdrawal form. So it's almost identical to the acknowledgement form that you get when you open up a school, and you will withdraw your student in the same way you enrolled them and then take that information back into your district of residence. We do keep your school information. So for some multifamily homeschools or schools, non-public schools with several students, we do keep any homeschool open and with students enrolled, and then we keep that information on file. So if you have another child that you'd like to enroll in your same homeschool, we can reopen it several years later. So we have that as well. I think I covered all that.
I think so. And there was a question I thought of while you were speaking of that was asked, and I can't remember it now, so maybe I will remember it again. We also had several questions about preschool and kindergarten milestones, and I know part of our discussion also talked about what milestones for higher grades like middle school and high school and secondary schools, and the process of maybe they want to homeschool for elementary, but then when they get to the secondary schools, middle school, high school, so forth, they decide to go to public school. So if you can talk about what is the milestones needed for that, and the kind of the process and some of the things that they would need to do that.
Yeah.
To do those different things.
So along with the very limited requirements of our documentation, we also have none. We have no requirements for educational purposes for any non-public school grades. So when we talk about kindergarten milestones, there is nothing that the Department of Education or our state as a whole will dictate for learning or milestone instruction. There is graduation requirements starting at the 9th through 12th grade in Delaware State Code, but it is very specifically laid out for public schools. So if you want to follow that as a guideline, whether you're thinking about re-enrolling your student midway through, or maybe you're looking at preparing them for ending a middle school career and maybe moving back into high school as a public education student, you could look at those requirements. It just kind of guesstimate where you are within your curriculum. But as far as requiring specific criteria or curriculum for non-public school students, we do not do that in Delaware. I will say though, in the same, on the other hand, when or if you ever decide to re-enroll your student in public school, this is where that documentation becomes super, super helpful, because a school may often ask for that documentation or what curriculum has been used, or what courses have been completed in your homeschool if they are trying to validate what credits are being can be transferred over or taken care of as moving into each grade.
Similar to when a college student
Yes.
is switching schools.
Mm-hmm.
So programs.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
So is that everything for that question that you would like to say?
Yep.
Okay. So we also talked about secondary ed credits in the aspect of going to a school. I think Delaware Tech was specifically mentioned about taking courses as high school credit and those then being applied to secondary and so forth.
Yep. So that is something that we often see in homeschool, and it is just as manageable as in a public school. The only thing that is the difference here is who is coordinating the classes. So instead of the district coordinating secondary classes or dual enrollment classes on behalf of the student, it would be up to the parent to reach out to the college and see if there's anything that they would offer within that area that they could take at the same time.
Okay. And now I know Del Tech offers courses. I believe Del Tech offers courses like that. Are there any other of the universities in Delaware and colleges that do that as well?
So I don't actually know right off the top of my head, but I do recall that we have a couple of districts who work with Del State and University of Delaware. So depending on where you're located, I think you have a couple of options in your enrollment courses. Yep.
And I think that was all of our questions. So thank you.
Absolutely.
For spending time with us again today. Go back to that. There we go. And for rescheduling this so that we can get this information out to our patrons and anyone else. If you are listening from another state, please contact their Department of Education because they will be able to help you with any of the questions. So Maryland, Pennsylvania, both have corresponding departments, and that information can be found on their state's websites as well. So Lindsay, thank you for joining us. I will be putting the Delaware Department of Education link that Lindsay mentioned in the description below, and her email as well if you have any questions once this goes live. And hopefully that will be in a couple of days. But as of recording, this is October 5th. So hopefully I can get that up. I'm hoping to get that up tomorrow, maybe even later tonight.
Awesome.
So thank you so much, Lindsay, for joining us. And we loved all of the information, all the questions that were initially asked on our day of. If you are listening to this, Skill Builders for Homeschoolers at Rehoboth Beach Public Library is a monthly program. It is on the third Tuesday of the month. We will be doing those sessions virtually through Zoom, and you will have to register for that on our calendar on our website, rehoboth.lib.de.us. That will also be in the description below on our calendar. Our next meeting is October 21st. And this year we will be talking about technology. So the first 10, 15 minutes will be basic computer skills for the younger students. And then we have a variety of topics and programs: Microsoft Word, Excel, Publisher, social media, internet safety and security, and things like that, that we will be talking about through May. Whether we continue virtually or at some point, fingers crossed, we can be back in the building again. So thank you for joining us again, Lindsay. And I will put her email, her links, and our email and links in the description below. Thank you so much.
Thank you.